All right, we're at 101. So I'm going to go ahead and start because we've got a lot of really great stuff to cover. As I've mentioned twice before already, we'll get into it with peak season. And we're looking at sort of how you move from peak survival into using your fulfillment as a strategic advantage and some of the problems you may have to solve in doing that. So, what we're going to do is we're going to start off, I'm going to talk some housekeeping, and then we'll move into the actual session. So first off, if you'd like to participate, if you hear something that maybe kicks off a thought in your head and you want maybe a deeper answer, we may or may not have time at the end of the session to get back to it, but we will follow up if you do have a question. So in order to leave a question, what you could do is just add them into the QA down at the bottom. There's a little button you can push. You can see that there. It'll bring up a window like you see on the right. Add whatever question you want. If we have time, we'll address them. If we can't address them, we'll get back to you because we've got a little bit of an offer that we'll talk about at the end where we're going to send out some stuff to you as a thanks for you attending. Okay. So now let's get started. One of the things that we'll see, and you guys will be able to see from the DTC report, is there's been a big shift, really a transformation from what we've seen in the past, where it was more like firefighting and direct consumer, where we had COVID and everyone had to kind of move in and build these businesses to handle the lower foot traffic. Now we're getting into 4 or 5 years after that, and we're seeing 84% of our respondents for our DTC survey were very confident in their fulfillment systems. Now, what does that mean? They feel like they can handle peak volumes. They feel like they can take on new channels. It was just really a shift in what we saw in the past, where people were really looking to build these businesses, really hopeful to grab business. Now we're very confident, and we're seeing people specialize and do exactly what they have the efficiencies to take on the right business, to drive the right profit, and be confident in their execution abilities. One of those people that have made those transformations is our friends from Dime Beauty. And what we've got here is the fulfillment team. And I've got David Luna, the senior manager of fulfillment, and Baylie Waters, the warehouse operations manager. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, David, maybe you could just say a couple words about what Dime Beauty is and how you guys are fulfilling. What type of product? I think people can figure it out, but maybe you could just fill them in on it.
Yeah, so Dime Beauty, we do skincare products. They are clean products registered through EWG. We do D2C direct fulfillment. We also do some B2B channels, Ulta and Amazon. And generally ship small parcel. We do anywhere from about 40 to about 60 SKUs. It kind of fluctuates over time. We do have some like bundles that we do send out. So, those add a little bit to our SKUs, but that's kind of what we do in this warehouse. We have one fulfillment center, and it's located in Utah.
Very lucky to be out there. We were just talking how beautiful it is out there. And so one of the things that what I think would help everyone is like, let's start back at the beginning on kind of where you were, and then we could talk about how your operations were. As I understand it, you guys started before you joined and made some platform investments with DePosco. You guys were really a manual operation, and you kind of had a lot of different challenges. Maybe you could talk me through some of the challenges that you guys saw as you were growing that DTC business.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to talk about is when we first started, we were, like you said, a manual process. So what manual process leads is we were printing labels out, right? Printing labels of customers' orders, grouping them as best we can over time, which made the best sense for us to pick this group with this group with this group, these many SKUs with these many SKUs, and trying to be more effective to meet our customer needs. But the problem, what we find with that is, I don't know about most people, but literally it happened to me this weekend. When you print those labels, you create this like ship notification. I don't know how great experience it is for you guys, but literally happened to me this weekend when I placed an order, got the ship notification on Thursday, Friday. Don't see any transactions along the transportation path till probably Monday, Tuesday. Well, that's what we were kind of seeing here. And one of the things that I track here is from order placement to delivery to the customer. And we kind of wanted to narrow that down. Well, without an OMS, we had to use this method to kind of strategically get orders out as fast as we could. But it wasn't very customer friendly as giving those ship notifications. Well, when we first started the first peak, right before we implemented POSCO, I would say like our order to delivery times during peak, which was 11 to 14 days initially, which is relatively large. I mean, even during peak, it's not kind of what I want to see. We want to kind of keep it a little bit down. So what DePosco allowed us to do once we implemented that is kind of we are able to batch out orders, single SKU, like by day, by time, more strategically and more detailed in order to get those orders out faster. And we kind of narrowed that over time, creating a better customer experience, going from that 11 to 14 days, anywhere from 6.1 days recently to about 7.2 during peak. And that's even with shipping times, right? And so that's relatively a great improvement over time. Kind of allowed our customers to kind of have better experience of, hey, we got less inquiries for our CS team. Where's my order? The very next sale that we had, and it's actually allowed us to kind of reduce the staffing of our customer service team as well because of the lower inquiries as well.
I think it also allows you to align with like customer expectations, which have, depending on which way you're looking, was gone crazy in recent people think that you're printing the stuff because you order it and it's supposed to be in your hand that afternoon or something like that. Really a challenge for us in retaining customers, getting that right message out, and making sure that they kind of build upon it, because one of the things that we hear about DTC as a channel is you're able to connect with that customer, manage the experience in a different way. So now you can potentially expand your brand. But if your brand is getting there late, that's not what you're looking for at all.
Yeah, and I'll also add to that. One of the things that I noticed from looking at the statistics is our average order to pack to the first scan went down from anywhere from 2.2 days to literally a half a day in this time period. So that's a significant change. Literally, orders are getting printed and scanned same day. I would say it's never really dipped above 0.07. So maybe later in the day to get scanned, but it's literally getting scanned and put in transit that same day, which I think is a great experience for the customer to know is, hey, my order is getting packed, picked, and shipped all in that sequence.
And I also understand that the inventory visibility, you talked about that sort of real time as things are happening and it's getting decremented as it happens. I understand that you guys had every Monday you had a huge count. It sounded like it would just really, really wear on you.
Yeah, we definitely did that, have that 100% inventory counts every Monday. I will let Baylie speak on the 100% inventory counts because she was more in detailed with that on the day-to-day operations. But I will say it did take a lot of labor every single Monday.
Yeah, to kind of go along with that, I think the biggest thing when we were looking at vetting through different softwares is having that backbone inventory management. With that, we did have to do weekly cycle counts 100% across our entire product portfolio. Since the change to DePosco, we have visibility into transaction history, we have ledgered notes, we have visibility into the entire life cycle of a product from receipt all the way to when it ships out the door. One of our biggest pain points before we migrated over was the communication directly from our previous WMS to Shopify. So there wasn't a direct API sync with that. So instead of having real time transactions and adjusting down your inventory as we ship things out the system, we would have to send a certain percentage of inventory into Shopify manually and adjust that as needed. And then we would pull weekly reports that way and compare what was in our predated WMS versus what's in Shopify and manage it that way. Since the change, we've obviously seen a significant increase in efficiency where we're able to not put as much labor into that specific role of the operation and instead direct those labor hours towards pick and pack fulfillment, allowing us to run lean, allowing us to push more volume out the door and then meet those SLA commitments that David was just talking about.
I think you also hit upon another key challenge when you start moving channels is now you've got inventory sort of segmented, if you will, for each one. And now that managed becomes 1X, 2x, 3x as you add the different channels on, trying to manage those. And I can imagine how being able to split them up into waves that match, or inventory, being fully confident that the inventory that's being allocated is there. Huge weight off your shoulders, I'm sure. One of the things that we also saw was that sort of DTC growth that you guys saw fueled your expansion. So if we were to look into sort of those three channels that you mentioned, Dave, you talked about that DTC, Amazon, and Ultra. That DTC is a huge portion of it. You guys ship nearly 1 million orders. I know you guys have a tight SKU. Some of these guys probably heard 40, 50 SKUs and was like, ooh, I'd love that. But then when you're doing volumes of different connections of them, different, bundles, different, that it does get much more complicated. I think this growth was that inflection point that kind of triggered you guys to look to a new system. Is that right?
Yeah, that's definitely correct. I mean, yeah, it's a nearly 1 million orders, but like we're looking at the complexity of anywhere from 2.79 units per order to 3.79, depending on what like our offerings are. Like if we offer a GWP or buy one get one, sometimes those come down as individual picks instead of one singular. So it's kind of that, and it also, like you said, the inventory flow kind of helped with FIFO, managing with Ulta, and managing with Amazon, because we doubled our sales in Amazon this last 2024 and 2025. And then we are 2024, and we're projected to double again this year with Amazon. Ulta, probably about, let's say I can't give you the exact numbers, but we have opened probably at least 300 to 500 stores additionally with Ulta this year, as well as the end of last year. We went not from just ulta.com, we actually went to in stores, which is kind of huge to our growth as well, which makes it a little bit more complex when you're shipping to Ulta as well.
That's right. And that's another thing I think that's important as a business. If you're looking at that DTC channel, if you're ever looking to expand, you got to make sure your partner's able, you don't want to be choosing another WMS, OMS provider again if you get that opportunity to move into Ulta like you guys have, and move into Amazon and that B2B. So you want to make sure that your provider is an omni-channel provider, so it doesn't limit you for things that you're maybe not looking at yet. Do you know what I mean? I think that growth, driving those DTC efficiencies, now you can take on that B2B business knowing at least sort of 80-90% predictably about how you're going to profit and how you're going to execute that because of the investments that you've done in DTC. I'm really excited for the journey that you guys are going on to. And if we step back and look at some of the sort of what was the results of what you guys have seen, I think it paints a really great picture. When we're talking fulfillment as a strategic advantage, with the improvements that we'll be talking about in just a little bit, and also the ones that you've already mentioned, you guys went from a number of daily units shipped. We don't need the exact number, but you went up to 32% of that volume, while reducing the number of people that did it. So I think that's a huge story there. Maybe you could talk to some of the things that you guys have done and to enable that unit ship and that lower labor.
Yeah, like one of the things, like I talked about before, was like printing the labels, organizing, sorting, and not really having an OMS. Like the amount of people that we needed to kind of organize that was significant compared to now. Now we have one person that manages the waves, clicks a button, batches out orders, gets the orders to the team, so on and so forth. And it just goes to like also where we're able to be more strategic in our training because everything is repeatable. It can be passed on knowledge base based off of the SOPs we built through the things that we've used with the POSCO, where I could just hand somebody that's onboarding, whether when we influx with temp users, here's the SOP, and we can get people relatively up to speed super fast. So that's kind of where that kind of added value to the labor reduction is everything's repeatable, especially with our bundles prior to going with the POSCO. What would come down from Shopify would be like, hey, we're going to go pick the works. Well, my team was relatively great with memorizing all the different bundles, but the temps weren't. And like, I have never seen anybody better at managing the different nuances of what's in what bundle than my team. But when we added temps, we see a significantly diminishing return when we added those numbers. So by giving using Deposco and having single line orders populate down to, hey, you're going to pick one of these, one of these, one of these, one of these. They don't even see that it's in a bundle. They just know, hey, I need to go pick X and it's at Z, and then I pick it and put it in my cart, and that's it. And so that created some more efficiencies that we've seen throughout the time.
A lot of things that you nailed on. I also have been in warehouses, been completely impressed with the tribal knowledge of the group. I mean, they just really can figure out. I've had where they can tell you exactly how long a pick sequence is going to take in their head. They're like, oh, that's going to take 22.8 minutes or something like that. And they could be very close. But the challenge of that is it's difficult to expand that, they scale that. It's difficult if it's not in a system. It's difficult when you try to staff up or try to grow like you guys have with 200% more orders. You start losing those smaller errors, the integration, all those tiny things I think in warehouses add up to be the real time sucks, right? Because like 95% of your stuff goes through really quick, but then when you're having one bundle mispicked or something like that, and you had to go back to get that, or your order sequencing is off or things like that, those nagging things, you're not getting your orders at the right time, those nagging things are what really suck down a warehouse's efficiency and sort of drive that profit down into areas where we don't want to see. Really excited about some of the things that you guys have pushed forward. Now I'd like to go ahead. Pardon me.
Yeah, and one of the things that like I want to make sure that I relay is like one of the things we do here is we do skip level meetings, and I meet down with everybody down to the team members. And during one of our meetings this last quarter, it was actually asked of me, one of the things I noticed is that we are able to have more output with less people. Is that, purposeful, or like, how did we get that? And I was like, really what it is we're now more efficient than we were before. And it was super, super interesting to hear someone that just onboarded literally, I'd say about a month, right when we were after we started using Deposco. So it's super interesting to hear that feedback from the team, how far we scaled up as well.
That's incredible, because you're really defining a culture, right? So now you can really start getting new people get in, see that culture, see the leadership, see where everything's going. And it's less of a blip when you start adding people. They kind of get into that family and keep going. I really love that story. It's really something that being across many warehouses is really close to my heart. What I'd like to do now is, I feel like there's really great discussions when we talk through some of the things that you guys saw. There was a lot of sort of specific benefits that you got in 2 or 3 different areas that I'd like to hone into. And Baylie, I think we had talked about sort of order accuracy benefits and how important that is to make sure, especially with your assortment, right? I'm assuming you could get a little tiny vial that has a pretty good, street value or whatnot. So you wanted to make sure that you get every one of those in the right order at the right time, as well as building your brand and making sure that everyone, is behind you and what you guys are trying to accomplish. Maybe you could speak to some of these little terms and things like that, how they've impacted you with the new platform when you move from manual to a more system-based approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to start, our biggest focus when we did, look out to implement was streamlining fulfillment, optimizing our inventory management in support of long-term sustainable growth. And there are a lot of things that kind of go into that. As far as order accuracy, making sure that we had a strong foundation of inventory management, where we're tracking everything by lot, we're tracking everything by license plate number, LPN, we're managing our expirations, we're managing testing, we're managing how we communicate across from our production plant all the way through to how we handle inventory now. And I think our ability to have such a sound operation, having that user-friendly training like David talked about, enables us to flex individuals over across multiple departments. And with that, they're expanding their knowledge, they're becoming well-versed to the roles of the operation, and then in return, your accuracy starts to go up, both in order fulfillment and inventory returns, whatever it may be.
I think you touched on a couple key things there. That system-driven nature is key to this, because one of the things that I've seen really drives down, and you guys can speak to this if you feel the same, is having too many decision points for a picker, a packer, or something like that. it just muddies the water for them, right? You really just want them executing. If you're going to get to the efficiencies that we need, it's almost like muscle memory where you're following the ball, you're doing exactly what the next best task is that the system's defining. And when you give them too many decision points, it just sort of that little bit of whatever, making that point takes 2 minutes. You guys are doing 2,000 picks a day. Those add up really quickly. So I think maybe Baylie, you could talk to how the UI has helped sort of expand that. I heard that you guys are really able to bring people up quickly and not even use I'll plug our we've got a DePasco University that helps you use the tool. But we got some feedback from you, Baylie, that you guys didn't even need to use DePasco University, which is also great for me to hear.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We spend a lot of time going through different configurations, and that helped the user experience. So as it comes to allocation that David talked about, we have different waving allocation profiles set up. We set up our pick sequencing to be more efficient, system directed. Basically, DePasco is swallowing our labor instead of dime, is where we've seen the outcome and the benefit here. As far as the user experience, handheld functionality, the team is so directed by the system. They do not have to spend time reading anything. I know that was a big thing when before we went live is we would have iPads staged around the pick face and they would scroll through and try to find images of each bundle, and that would take time. And as David mentioned, with the additional temp labor, that would add up over time. So all of the back end configuration, all the implementation, all of the time and effort put into making sure that we established a sure foundation for a system, enabled it so the team could jump on to any function, any process, and execute it seamlessly with a few training points here and there.
The other thing, I think it's such a repeatable process too. Now you've got a process defined. We could use 60, 70% of that, apply that to our Amazon. Now we could take almost 100% of our Amazon, apply it to Ulta. I think that's also huge too, as far as those different times, wherever you guys can compress those timelines, compress those decision points. And this, I'm sort of speaking to the customer base, wherever you, or potential customer base, whatever you can compress those in the time, you're going to get that efficiency. And that ends up reducing your labor, increasing your orders, upping your profit. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was some customer experience wins, because a lot of times people attach efficiency, they attach the labor benefits, they attach the accuracy benefits. They don't really think about how much that impacts your brand, the customer, and how that also drives DTC growth. Because as we mentioned with Amazon, the 2-day, the 2-day air is sort of an expectation. The other expectation is that I can get your stuff somewhere else. So if you're not fulfilling it right, they're going to potentially go somewhere else. So I think capturing that customer, keeping that customer is more important than ever. And I think the connection of fulfillment excellence to that is also an interesting story that you guys have gone through. So David, do you mind talking to the customer service and some of the, you mentioned the customer service inquiries you guys are getting?
Yeah, so what we kind of see is over time is, like I kind of already spoke about, that ship order notification, as customers were getting those notifications prior, having their order sit there for 1 to 2 days, no scans, reaching out, where's my order, over time, which wasn't a great experience, especially during peak when they were pressed against those holidays. What we were allowed to do is able to reduce those ship times to, like I said, 0.05 days from when it's scanned first. So once that order is, it's picked, packed, and shipped, when you get the notification, it's not waiting or sitting there dwelling for a long period of times. And it kind of also reduced our customer service inquiries for where's my order over time. We did have a larger staff prior with our customer service team. I think it's 2 to 3 people less now, which kind of adds up over time with the reduction of cost that it costs the customer service team. So it's not only fulfillment costs, it's customer service, as well as benefit from our implementation at Topasco, as well as our SLA. We aren't open on the weekends, so normally what happens is on Monday we'll have Friday nights, Saturday, Sunday to fulfill. On Monday and Monday nights, Mondays kind of flow in there as well. where we were before is we were around that 72 to 96 hours to get kind of caught up with that. Where right now we are caught up almost midday, end day Monday with the weekends orders, working on Monday, Sunday nights, um, beginning of Tuesday, and some of Tuesdays on Tuesdays. So we're also able to maintain the SLA of 2 days, and that's including during peak of getting those orders out the door. Where it wasn't to that same experience prior, there was a period of time during peak where we had so much volume and we couldn't handle the amount of orders coming in, no matter what we had brought in with staff, because we were seeing diminishing returns when we brought people in without a WMS. So we were able to have that from probably about 4 to 5 days, maybe sometimes 6, down to those 2 day SLAs. No matter what type of time of year or what type of sale we have going on, we're able to maintain that SLA, which also reduces in the customer inquiries. And we've actually seen some feedback, whether it's on Instagram or a Facebook group or our Google reviews. They're like, "Oh, I placed my order on the same day it was shipped during the sale." That's great. Thank you, Dime. Those kind of type of feedback we've seen feed up to our CS team.
Proud Papa moment there. One of the other things that I thought was very interesting, and I've seen this across our customer base, is your fulfillment and how you execute, enabling other business models. I'll start off with the one that's outside of this, and then I'll get to one that I think you guys have done. We have a cold fulfillment group, and because of their accuracy, that their picking accuracy that we've been able to enable with our platform, they now have the only 100% accuracy guarantee in that particular cold fulfillment area, because of their excellence. You guys now moving to this 2 day, I understand that you were able to have a different marketing approach where you now have a countdown on your website that kind of tells people when they're going to get their things, or something like that, that was also enabled by this. And I've seen other variations of that, like with an opportunity to add something for a discounted fee because of the order consolidation, because we're going to put it in the same box and it doesn't cost us an extra shipping fee, but it raises the price. So that's another thing that I'd like to, customers to think about is, what are different ways that I could leverage my excellence to market better, to sell better, to fulfill, or, delight customers, if you will, better. And maybe, David, you could kind of give us a little bit more on that countdown you were speaking of.
Yeah, so if you ever shop on Dime, what one of the things we were able to implement is there's a little countdown. I'm a little selfish on this. I want to steal some of our business back from Amazon. You know, I think my team loves the work, and so kind of increase our margins by stealing that back. So we do have a little countdown that's on our website that will say if you order by it's 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you order by then, and it's kind of goes through whatever time zone you're in, it fluctuates that, and it's kind of set up that way. It says that your order will pick, pack, and ship that same day. Also, we do offer 2 day shipping on the orders that we can do. We do ship some limited quantities, so we're not able to offer that on the limited quantities, but we are able to offer that on all of our skincare products, which I think is a great win. One of the things that I do when I shop is, when can I get this? Do I need it now? Type of thing. And I think that's the majority of what the American consumer is now. I hate to say it, but like Amazon kind of ruined logistics for a lot of us. I worked there, so I know before, you got to get that order out on this hour by this time. Now, what we're allowed to do with the Posco is kind of mirror that expectation. And we're still working on a couple other things that, I want to add to this same kind of thing that are near coming to the future. But it kind of allowed us to do that. We're able to batch those out. Even ones that aren't that are set up for the next day after that timer, usually we're able to get those out a day earlier as well, which I think is another win. I mean, who is happy to say, "Hey, my product was shipped a day earlier"? I don't know anybody that's ever said that.
Fantastic. And I love the different ways that your investment are allowing you guys to grow, expanding into channels, reducing costs, expanding volumes, going into different models, different marketing aspects, building your brand in a different way. I think it's key to understand how that investment into your core abilities impacts everything around it. The last
100%.
thing that we wanted to talk about was, and Baylie, we've touched on some of these, but the simplified bundle picking, I think, and again, we have talked through this, the scaling aspect of this. One of the things is it's like you can do something really well, but then when you start having to build it out, like my stepmother knits these like placemats, and they're beautiful and they're great. Well, my wife got her into this school thing where all of a sudden she needed 70 of them, and it became a problem. So it's like it's really great when you're kind of doing it one bespoke, but then when you try to start scaling, you run into issues. So Baylie, maybe you could talk to some of the different, labor or other challenges that you've run into as you guys were different scaling. I know you've touched on some of these, so just speak where you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Initially, when we were doing bulk picking, so single line item for a pool of customers, as David mentioned before, we're printing these off in bulk. And there were times where we would carry orders over and the customer would expect those same orders to be shipped out the following day. Now with the POSCO, we utilize the same function, but we're able to streamline it based off our pick sequencing, based off where we push labor, limited training. They're able to just use the system, directs them to the location, directs them to the quantity, and tie that to a single container and ship those off very efficiently, very effectively. As far as scaling, as it comes to onboarding, so on and so forth, when we do bring in additional temp labor, the reduction in training has been astronomical. So whether we're bringing in the same temps who have been trained previously or we're introducing them to an entirely new process, they're able to jump on with limited supervision, limited guidance, and just allow the system to do the work.
I think that's key. So that again, that's scaling allows you to expand your workforce and be confident that they're going to get the actual work done. Because I've seen where temps are, you've got to have the temp shadow you for a while. That temp doesn't come back the next day, and now you've lost that shadow person's day. There's just a lot of nuances in bringing on temp workers without a system in order to kind of get them into that culture, into that expectations to deliver all these things that we've been talking about. It's challenging without some sort of system where you can say, hey, straightforward. If you've used a phone before, you probably know how to do this. Follow the activities. That's a way different conversation than this bundle has these 3 items and this bundle has these 5 items, as you guys were doing in the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cheers. So now I'd like to move back into what our DTC findings and how a lot of what Dime is experiencing was actually mirrored in what we heard executives and supply chain leaders say. So if we look at some of the stats, I'll go back to that initial stat we talked about with a lot more people confident in their systems. Not in the past, I don't have the exact numbers, but in the past, we felt everyone was moving into DTC, prioritizing it as a channel, but not necessarily confident in how it approached. And in the last year, all that's changed. I think those different investments are now coming to fruition. The implementations have finished, and now they're sort of evening out, so you can see what your performance is and start predicting stuff. I think that's giving a lot of confidence to the entire fulfillment industry. A really interesting one was the growth of DTC. 86% of those surveys had 50% or more of their revenue from DTC. And pardon me, I said that wrong. At least 50% of their revenue from DTC, which is a huge expansion from what we've seen in the past again. So now we can see that as people tried to get that direct customer connection during pandemic and those investments, they're all paying off and they're seeing really good growth. And the thing about DTC is you get to control that interaction. You get to control that expectation of when you're going to get it. You get to drop in those different value-added services or different, offers and everything. It's an experience you control, which makes it really, really brand defining. We think is very important. And then now we're seeing a shift for people into focused or sustainable growth, meaning they know what they're good at and they're taking on more business that allows them to execute at what they're good at. They're not looking for new DTC businesses. They're really actually expanding into different channels, like a lot of the things that we saw today with Dime Beauty. They're confident in their system because they've made that shift from that manual system into a scalable platform. They've had that multi-channel expansion that is continues to grow, but then they've also got that DTC business that they know they can lean on, and it's very predictable. And now they're really looking at growth through expansion, grabbing those new channels, looking at Amazon, taking business back from Amazon. I love that statement. Looking at how they can define excellence that's greater than even this bigger provider, and then capture more of their customers, get more profit. I think that's very interesting. Now I want to take just a minute to talk through, just between the three of us, talk to some of the different things that we saw as far as potential strategic lessons that you can take from this. So one of them is workforce development. There's been a big shift in the past. I know we talked about bringing on temps, but I think there's been a shift where temps are not a necessary evil. I can't think of a better phrase, but are necessary when they're necessary. But generally what we're seeing is people are doing a lot more cross training, making sure that people can do multiple roles and they can sort of follow the life cycle. Maybe we're receiving and then we move over into a certain type of bulk picking while someone else is doing each picking or doing some replenishment, but we're doing multiple roles to keep them to use some of that time that we've gained back from the efficiency. So maybe Baylie, you could talk on that workforce development. I know you guys kind of built this facility specific knowledge. I know we talked about sort of the bundles, but it feels like you guys kind of have a whole comprehensive training program around how you manage your labor and how you invest back into them.
Yeah, absolutely. We have established SOPs for each one of our processes, and I have a great leadership team who oversees each one of those processes. One of the great things about Diamond having a smaller fulfillment team who covers all of these different operational roles is our ability to flex and train and incentivize them. So whether or not there are promotional opportunities in an elevated position, we still can give them that elevated knowledge, that elevated growth and expansion into different roles throughout the operation, whether that's on a daily flex or a weekly, monthly, we're able to expose them to different things. And in return, we're helping establish and promote personal and professional growth with the team that we do have. And that's been a very positive return with DePosco integration as well.
Listen, now labor's been a challenge my entire career. People have been talking about how it's hard to find people, it's hard to get them back in. We've had different, political type things that are also challenging our people out in California and other places. You have to keep the labor you get. Part of that is by investing back into them, making their feeling they're part of something bigger, incentives, as Baylie talked about, having a environment where they feel useful and they feel like they're working towards something, a goal, an outcome. That's huge for getting people in, getting them knowing it. And honestly, the longer they're there, the better they know their job and the better they are at it. That tribal knowledge and everything, there's a system level that we can define that helps them, but there's also an interest, sort of a desire and that sort of experience that really, really supercharges it. So when you get people in, you want to keep them. And the way you keep them is by investing in them with cross-training, a lot like what Dime Beauty's doing. Another thing that we wanted to talk about is sort of the strategic partner, strategic investments, making sure that you partner with the right one. Baylie, you guys had some really, and I didn't do any of it, so I can kind of big up our professional service and our implementation group. You had some really good input in sort of when you guys chose the platform, there was some knowledge that you guys had, but you were really happy with sort of the direction that our partnership was able to give you. Maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think initially David and I had the opportunity to go and visit other clients of DePosco's, and we could kind of see how their operation performs in real time. And having a project team that's well versed, who is putting themselves in a vulnerable position to bring somebody on who could be a potential client and see how everything flows throughout an operation was really eye-opening for David and I. We had a very unique implementation experience where we were tasked to get this ball rolling and implemented in peak of 2023. And our project team guided us in a way, in a collaborative approach where we could bounce off different ideas, bounced off different configurations and models, so on and so forth. And as we're presenting and speaking on our timelines, we really establish, does it make more sense to implement certain things in stages and then wait for other things the following calendar year? And that's really where we're seeing the difference from 2024 to 2025 as well, as our first initial go live was more focused on direct to consumer, as David has talked about. That's really where we wanted to streamline our fulfillment and optimize our operation. And now we're turning that back around and using those same principles, those same configurations, and plugging that into our wholesale channel as we continue to scale Ulta and Amazon.
Excellent, excellent. David, I don't know if you had any experience with that. I think I do like the whole customers talking about it, because not everyone gives site visits. Not everyone has customers that want to give site visits.
Yeah, we've all actually hosted some site visits since then, and so being able to be on the other side of these things, and kind of give them our insights. And one thing about operations is not every operation's the same. We all have different ideas, different things. So it's good to have that back and forth on what we found worked for us and what they have challenges. But I would say one thing to add to kind of Bailey's story during our implementation is the great thing about like when we're implementing with the Posco is, I have years and years of experience, but that doesn't mean I always have the right idea. I don't implement a WMS every single day. I have done a few, but the team with the Posco would challenge me on my strategic thinking and say, well, what about this? Why wouldn't it work this way? Why can't we do it this way? So it was more like a back and forth partnership for that strategic investment of where our future was going with time, instead of, hey, this works now, but hey, what would work in the future? And I think that's the key part in scaling a business, is kind of not looking at what's right in front of you, but having the experience on that team that was implementing to say, hey, this may be great solution for now, but I've seen it done this way for this, and this is the benefit it had with that as well. So I think that was the most important part for me was, okay, it's not only me in this and Baylie in this, it's a strategic investment in our operation and the growth going forward, not just for 2023, 2024, but 2023 and 4 and beyond is where the decision-making process was.
That's right. We want that super arc growth. That's what we're looking for. And that brings us to our final one is, if you, and what I mean by this, peak is profit, if you can define the right investments, invest in your workforce, the processes behind it, the systems, you can turn your fulfillment into a strategic advantage, a competitive advantage where you're driving margin. You'd think David wants to take things from Amazon because they're making less money when they send it direct to consumer. No, he wants to capture as much profit as he can. And these types of systems, these investments allow him to do so by making sure that you're aligning people, processes, and the future. As David mentioned, you can really turn what potentially is a cost center right now into an engine that drives you growth in the direct to consumer channel, efficiencies that build your business in other ways, moving into new channels, expanding in it, pulling back a volume from other channels that you can do better, things like that. The confidence in order to grow and sort of excel through that operational excellence. It's just been a great story. And I really want to thank you, David and Baylie, for your time and your really an interesting super relatable stories. Anyone that's been in a facility, anyone that's stood up a warehouse or fulfilled any orders can understand the challenges that you guys have been through. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us and our and the group that's joined here. And the last thing I'll end on is the fact that I'd like to thank you, all the attendees that's here. We'll be following up on any questions that we have, and we'll also be sending out a recording of this actual interaction so that you can share with coworkers or anyone that didn't make it. And we'll be sharing our actual DTC supply chain report that goes into more depth about how you could use your supply chain as a operational excellence driver that helps you capture more profits, grow your business, and just be in a better place next year, much like our friends at Dime Beauty were. If you look at their incredible 2024 and how their 2025 is shaping up, we want to define that growth for you. So if you're interested in learning more, you can join us at deposco.com, and you can get some great healthy skincare products at dimebeautyco.com with our group, David and Baylie. I thank everyone for joining today and look forward to our next session. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, guys, for joining.